are now soaring, including Florida and Texas, saying visitors could face major fines if they don't comply. Florida tonight with a record 5,500 new cases, long lines for testing. Texas reporting more than 5,500 cases. The ICU beds at Houston's hospitals are now at 97%. The governor now suggesting new restrictions may be needed. Arizona's ICUs are under stress as well tonight, and a staggering number of cases in California. More than 7,000 cases in a single day, and what a very frustrated and concerned governor said there today. Authorities fear that Americans, and in many cases young Americans, are not taking this seriously, not social distancing. And tonight the CDC now predicting we could see 150,000 American lives lost by July 18th. That's 3 weeks from now. And so we begin tonight with ABC's Tom Yamas from Houston.
Tonight, with new coronavirus infections surging to their highest level in months, the governors of New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut now taking drastic action to prevent more outbreaks.
People coming in from states that have a high infection rate must quarantine for 14 days.
Much like Florida did at the peak of the pandemic, New York's governor says police will stop cars with out-of-state license plates. Visitors from 9 of the nation's biggest hotspots could face up to $10,000 fines if they break the rules. For the first time since April, the U.S. reporting nearly 35,000 new cases. And while the country is doing more testing, hospitalizations are also on the rise in 21 states, an alarming trend. Florida shattering another daily record today, soaring above 5,000 for the first time. Parts of the Sunshine State were slow to shut down and quick to reopen. Nearly 60% of everyone tested on Tuesday had the virus. A 17-year-old high school student, one of the latest victims, killed by COVID-19. In Texas, health officials reporting a record number of new cases, more than 5,500. The virus taking a terrible toll on the Tarpley family from Fort Worth. Mom and dad, married 53 years, dying next to each other in the hospital, just an hour apart.
Wow.
My mom said, okay, see you tomorrow. And then she died laughing. Yeah, she knows they're not tomorrow.
And just outside of Houston, 3 members of the Rodriguez family dying from the coronavirus in just the last 2 weeks. In Harris County, which includes the Houston area, nearly 45% of all COVID-19 patients are Hispanic or Black, a stat that mirrors statewide numbers. At Texas Methodist Hospital, doctors taking us inside the ICU, healthcare workers suiting up for battle. They're now seeing entire families testing positive.
How are you all holding up?
It's a little stressful, but we're getting through.
The toll on the frontline workers mirrors what we heard and saw in New York 3 months ago. Nursing director Teal Riley telling us what it's like inside her ICU.
When they don't survive, you know, knowing that we did everything we possibly could to restore their, okay, you're gonna make me cry now.
No,
I have a hard time talking. This is the hardest part about the whole thing. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
The hospital now forced to expand their ICU bed capacity.
All the ICUs of mine are stressed out.
Dr. Faisal Masood is the head of critical care at this hospital. He says this second surge is different. This time, the patients are much younger, and he thinks he knows why.
So you're seeing younger patients, and you believe it's because they weren't following social distancing guidelines?
Absolutely. When you go out, and all the things which I've seen, the masks they're not putting on, they're not social distancing, and they're congregating in closed environment.
We have to listen to those frontline workers, that nursing director from inside the ICU, so moved by what she's seeing every single day play out there. Tom with us from Houston. And Tom, just as we were coming on tonight, the CDC out with a new and a really eye-opening number predicting American lives lost in just the next few weeks.
That's right, David. The CDC is out with some new predictions, and they are pretty grim. They report that somewhere between 130,000 to 150,000 people could be dead from the coronavirus by July 18th just in the United States, and that states like California, Arizona, Florida, and right here in Texas will likely see an increase in the death rate over the next 4 weeks. David?
Tom Yamas out in the country tonight. Tom, thank you. And we have been reporting here on homes for seniors and veterans, and tonight the horrific new report just out involving the Holyoke Soldiers Home in Massachusetts, where 97 veterans have died since just March. Investigators now calling it a tragic failure to protect the soldiers. Eva Pilgrim is in Massachusetts.
Tonight, the first investigation into the devastating COVID outbreak at the Holyoke Soldiers' Home found baffling decisions and substantial errors led by a superintendent who was not qualified to manage the facility. 76 veterans died during the outbreak.
The subject matter and details of this report are nothing short of gut-wrenching.
Independent investigators spelling out decisions they called utterly baffling from an infection control perspective. The worst, a move to consolidate 40 veterans from 2 locked dementia units into one space designed to only hold 25, mixing the infected with those who showed no symptoms. Investigators quote staff saying, "That's when hell broke loose, triggering total pandemonium." An administrator sent in to address the crisis described the unit as resembling a war zone, with some veterans clothed, some unclothed, and some obviously in the process of dying from COVID-19. Families reacting in horror.
It was really hard to read the report, read the words, and have the visual of the veterans.
The report detailing other failures, not isolating suspected COVID positive patients, delays in testing and closing common areas, and complete mayhem with record keeping. The superintendent of the home, Bennett Walsh, was placed on paid leave at the end of March. The secretary of the Massachusetts Department of Veteran Services, Francisco Arena, resigned last night just before the report's release. Tonight, Susan Kenny remembering her father, Chuck Lowell, one of the veterans who died from COVID.
My father's birthday was yesterday, and I fully believe he could have been here for that. That just not happened.
And this was the first of 4 investigations. The governor saying today that he expects that ex-superintendent who was put on leave, Walsh, will eventually be removed permanently. As of today, there were no COVID positive cases in the home. David?
Thinking about all of those families tonight. Eva, thank you. There is word tonight the European Union is now considering a temporary ban on Americans who want to travel to Europe. And take a look at this graph tonight, showing the number of cases in the U.S. and the European Union. Cases in the U.S. right there in red, the European Union in yellow, both peaking at about 30,000 cases a day. That was in early April. U.S. cases then dipping, but now soaring again, while cases in the EU have fallen sharply. So will Americans be kept out, at least for now? Here's our senior foreign correspondent, Ian Pannell.
Tonight, a potential ban on American tourists coming to Europe this summer. A spokesperson telling ABC News the European Union now reviewing who'll be allowed in when restrictions are eased next week. Proposed criteria including the epidemiological situation and coronavirus response in that country. The EU stating restrictions should remain in place for countries whose situation is worse than in the EU. The US appearing not to make the cut at this point. That graph from the Washington Post, based on Johns Hopkins figures, shows how much worse the US is doing than Europe, where the virus is slowing dramatically. Americans could be banned for the time being, together with Brazilians and Russians. China under consideration to make the travel list, according to the New York Times. Just look at Italy today. Sunshine, restaurants, even tourism returning. What a change from 15 weeks ago when the country, gripped by the virus, issued a lockdown.
Let's make it one decisive move. Yeah, while this is also a crucial health issue, it's also a political one. EU leaders will now have to consider any potential political blowback from a president who's been at odds with the European Union over travel and tariffs. David?
Ian Pannell with us tonight. Ian, thank you. And with the number of coronavirus cases now being seen in the U.S., it did rattle the markets today. The Dow falling 710 points. The International Monetary Fund now predicting the U.S. economy will shrink 8% this year because of the COVID crisis. Now to the other major news tonight. The Department of Justice under the microscope today on the Hill. Critics arguing the DOJ is playing politics to help President Trump's allies and friends. And it comes as just today a victory for President Trump. An appeals court siding with Attorney General William Barr, ordering the case against former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn be dismissed. Here's our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas, tonight.
A victory today for the Justice Department. An appellate court ordering a judge to dismiss the criminal case against former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. President Trump today voicing his approval.
I'm very happy about General Flynn. He was treated horribly. He was treated very, very horribly by a group of very bad people.
The court ruling a federal judge overstepped his authority, that the executive branch, not courts, decides which cases to bring or drop. Barr's decision to drop the case against Flynn brought controversy because Flynn pled guilty twice to lying to the FBI in the Russia investigation. Trump tweeting, "It's the reason he terminated Flynn. I had to fire General Flynn because he lied to the vice president and the FBI. He has pled guilty to those lies." Barr has been under fire, accused of helping the president's allies. Just last week, firing Jeffrey Berman, U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, who had been investigating Rudy Giuliani, the president's personal attorney.
The effort to remove Mr. Berman is part of a clear and dangerous pattern of conduct.
Today, career prosecutors accuse the Justice Department's leadership of playing political games.
Roger Stone was treated differently because of politics.
Prosecutor Aaron Zelinsky resigned from the case along with 3 other prosecutors. Today, testifying by video conference at Barr's decision to reduce the sentencing recommendation for Roger Stone, who was convicted of witness tampering and lying to Congress, was essentially abuse of power.
We do not prosecute people based on politics, and we don't cut them a break based on politics either. But that wasn't what happened here.
Zelinsky said his supervisor suggested that the odds were stacked in favor of Stone, a longtime friend of the president, and Zelinsky said he feared he could be fired.
And I was told that the acting U.S. attorney was giving Stone a break because he was afraid of the president of the United States.
Barr told me that the president was not involved. Did you talk to the president at all about your decision regarding the recommendations?
Never.
David, the Justice Department says Zelinsky had no evidence of anyone pressuring him about Stone's case. But this fight is far from over. House Democrats demanding Barr appear before Congress, and late today, we learned that he will, on July 28th. David?
Pierre Thomas with us again tonight. Thank you, Pierre. And next this evening, NASCAR driver Bubba Wallace is now speaking out. NASCAR and the FBI revealing Wallace was not targeted. Tonight, Wallace saying he's relieved, and that's not all. Here's Steve Osunsami.
Federal investigators tonight say that what happened at this Alabama racetrack was not a hate crime and are pointing to this video of the same garage stall where the crew of NASCAR's only elite black driver discovered a noose on Sunday. The video was recorded in October. In a statement, NASCAR says that this was a garage door pull, fashioned like a noose, and had been positioned there since as early as last fall.
I've been racing since I was 9 years old. I'm 26 now, I'll be 27 this year. And Max, I've never seen a garage pool like that.
Bubba Wallace, who now says that he wasn't targeted, says there's still a concerning issue and says whoever put this here is racially insensitive at best.
When my crew member had seen that, who happened to be African American, he did his research first, and I was very proud of that. And when he seen that the other garage pools were basically just a solid piece of rope, no knots in them, and we had a knot that was in the shape of a noose. Yeah.
This is another video to pay close attention to and may help make his case. It's from NASCAR and shows some of the other garage door pulls in the stalls at Talladega in 2017. All of them have simple ropes. Most of them appear to have simple knots. A man can't be hanged from one of these. Initially, this looked like a reaction to Wallace's push that convinced NASCAR to ban the Confederate flag at its racetracks. Before the event in Alabama, his competitors literally stood behind him in support, bringing him to tears.
Wallace has been getting an earful from his critics who feel that this whole incident has been manufactured. He agrees that part of the story is wrong, but says he'd rather be embarrassed than racially harassed. David?
All right, Steve Osunsami with us. Thank you, Steve. There is news tonight of the death of Ahmaud Arbery. A grand jury in Georgia has now indicted 3 suspects. Father and son Gregory and Travis McMichael, as well as William Bryan, all now facing murder charges. The McMichaels chased Arbery, who was jogging in their neighborhood, accusing him of burglary. Bryan, who recorded the incident, is now accused of helping to entrap him. We're also following a 5.8 earthquake rocking California, felt nearly 200 miles away in Los Angeles. Here's Will Carr.
Well, we had a little earthquake.
Tonight, first responders are racing to assess the damage after an earthquake rocked California's Central Valley along the eastern side of the Sierra Nevada mountain range.
There's a major rock slide on Whitney Portal. There's actually several rock slides in that area, from Horseshoe all the way north of Mount Whitney.
Oh my goodness!
The 5.8 magnitude quake hit near Lone Pine, California, and could be felt as far as Los Angeles.
This is an area of California that historically has had plenty of earthquakes.
The earthquake cracked tiles in Clovis and shook homes in Fresno, both hours from the epicenter. The 5.8 quake follows a 4.6 that hit the same area just 2 days ago.
Didn't need to be reminded. Mother Nature made sure we were reminded of her fury.
Thankfully, no injuries to report. Around 47,000 Californians got an alert on their cell phone as part of the state's early earthquake warning system. David.
All right, Will Carr in California. Thank you, Will. When we come back, those severe storms coming tonight, tornadoes possible, and we have the latest track.
What's more, the Bible.
COPD makes it hard to breathe.
The Bible's very
so to
clear.
breathe better, started one state.
The Bible's very clear in telling us that these will be all the beginnings of the sorrows that will fall upon to humanity in the last days. There was a major earthquake I think it was yesterday, it may have been the day before yesterday, down in Mexico. So if you look at that ring of fire, if you've ever studied what they call the ring of fire, that's going to be basically going right up from Mexico up through California. That's part of that same platelet system that obviously has pressure on it that's moving or that's releasing pressure or something. I'm glad that it wasn't a hate crime with NASCAR. I'm really, really glad. But whenever it comes to all this rigmarole going on in the White House, I don't think at the age of 59 that I've ever seen it quite this bad. Whenever you have one entity that's gnawing and pawing on the other entity.
See you.
Wow. Kind of makes you wonder.
Here for you.
Makes you wonder that maybe doomsday is just right around the corner for a lot of us. And if it ain't doomsday in one form, it's doomsday in another form. That's the reason why it is imperative for people to have a relationship with the Heavenly Father through the teachings of Christ. It's imperative. That is our only hope. Just like the Bible talks about in the first 4 chapters of Revelations. Be thou faithful unto death. And I, this is God talking, will give thee a crown of life. Fear none of these things which thou shalt suffer. Behold, Satan will throw some of you into prison, and ye will be tried. Be faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life. That's what the Bible says. That's not what Juby says, that's what the Bible says.
This is the benefit of blue.
We are tracking that severe weather from Louisiana to the Carolinas tonight. Severe thunderstorm watches right now in effect with alerts for damaging winds, hail, possible tornadoes. And tonight, NOAA also tracking that massive plume of dust now over the Caribbean and heading toward the U.S. expected later this week.
I've seen that. That plume of dust is supposed to be here by this weekend.
When we come back, that $10 billion settlement, a popular weed killer accused of causing cancer.
I'm going to leave it there to my viewers. And if it ain't one thing, it's another. The only peace that I can find is the peace through and with Christ. Good luck to all of us. And as we say again and again and again, Shalom.